Good morning, Claudia.
Good morning.
Yeah, I thought we could start today because we haven't done a video for a while, and just expressing a little bit about who we are. And well, I'm Christine Anderson. This is Claudia Ayez, and we have earthempaths.net, and we also have the YouTube channel, Not in Our Name, The Truth No Matter Where It Leads Us. And we've been working together going on 5 years now.
Yep.
Yes. So, Claudia, I'm going to just ask you a few questions about your research, about the reasons behind it, before we start our PowerPoint. And we've been going into, let's say, some of the more obscure or obscured research areas, and your particular interest for this past time, and I guess it goes back even 7 years with you, has been into law, or what we have dubbed the criminal legal system.
Yes.
So could you just tell us a little bit what's behind that within you that's taken you this way?
You know, I've never thought about that. I've always had a feeling that something in our world is profoundly wrong, because some stuff simply never added up. It's from learning at school stuff that simply isn't true, such as, fluoride is important for the human body. Yeah, it may be important, but not for your human body. And so eventually I arrived at the conclusion that it really depends on perspective. From my perspective, for example, fluoride is really bad. Now, from someone who wants to take complete control over another being, fluoride is very important. Because it makes you docile, which makes it easier to take complete control over you. And then I found that with other areas as well, by trying to switch my perspective, that suddenly things were falling into place. Take the justice system. A rapist is taken to court and gets 6 months. Someone who tries to cheat the IRS out of $2,000 tax will get a few years. And again, it comes down to perspective.
And you are born in Germany, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So you have a native or a native feeling for the Germanic people.
Yes. I would say so.
Yeah, because I mean, the research that what we presented before, we're going into sort of forbidden territory, forbidden subjects. And I just want to, from my perspective, what you said about switching your perspective or your perception is a vital aspect of us unveiling many, many thousands of years of deception. And I think what you and I have done, I don't think we set out to do it per se as a thought, but what we've done is we've flipped the world on another, we've looked at the underside, right? So it's a very valuable tool that one can acquire to look at anything. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it may resonate with you or it may be shocking to you, but flip it on its other side and start to look at the underside of it. Where is it coming from? And the subject that we're going to talk today, and you're going to mostly talk through it, is looking down deep into the roots, what we could call represented by the cosmic tree, which is flowering branches up on the surface. What's up here? What are we looking at? And what's down there at the root system where everything starts from. And so that delve into that is like peeling back layers and layers of different deceptions. So it's looking at where within that system that the world knows as justice, which is the farthest thing from justice, where did this start? How was this implemented? And who or what group or agenda is behind it. So I don't know if you want to express a little bit more about the importance of Germany. You have an affinity for something that is within Germany. And so just from your own inner perspective, what is it that, because we're going to be talking again about aspects of that at some point, but is there something that you feel is hidden there, something that is not meant to be revealed? Though that's what I was asking.
I would say yes, definitely, and it's in every aspect of life. I mean, we've been told a version of the so-called Second World War that is clearly not true. We learned at school that, Hitler was the worst human ever alive on the planet. They don't even say that about Stalin in German textbooks. We learn at school that we, the Germans, killed 6 million people. And all this is quite untrue. And the first time I had a problem with that was when I was in my teens. And I said, I never killed anyone. So why am I responsible for something I never did? That is simply not right.
Mm-hmm.
And we are told that the Federal Republic of Germany is Germany. Well, no, the Federal Republic to this day is under occupation of the Allied forces who allegedly won the war.
Wow. It's...
Yeah, go on.
No, just to bring it into what we share when we share so much together. What I feel we're looking at is that the great white tribes, okay, and we're talking Nordic, Germanic, up and through Romania, the Slavic people, they have been scapegoated as the bearers of evil. And it's such a misdirect. And so my current walk has taken me to Standing Rock. It's taken me back into touch with the root cultures on our planet. And without most people knowing, okay, because it's not been revealed yet, what was the genocide of the white tribes? What happened there, and why would Germany hold such a vital key, if you will, to unlocking this? And because all we can see, really, you and I, by turning the whole paradigm on its end, is that Germany is under occupation and is suppressed to the extent that you cannot even question the doctrine, and you can be put in jail for it. And I know you risk, when you are speaking, you personally risk having your passport removed or being arrested within your country of birth.
Yeah. It's estimated at the moment that about 2,000 people are in jail because they questioned,
So just to speak to the honor of the courage that it takes for a single being to start to reveal their own truth. And I know when you and I are speaking, we're not speaking to put down another, to raise up another. This is about releasing the hidden knowledge of who we really are and what is our root ancestry here. What are we native to? And so with that being said, let's just go into, I'll open up our PowerPoint, and I'll let you do most of the talking. If I don't understand something, I'll simply ask you questions.
Right. I want to jump in here just quickly to say that.
Pardon?
I want to jump in here quickly. You were saying something about hidden or secret knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
We are not revealing anything that is hidden or secret. And this is important insofar because if I'm told something in confidence, privately, I have absolutely no right to bring that to the public.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what it is. If I take that to the public, then I'm going to be targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you can differentiate between the various so-called whistleblowers. If Edward Snowden had not been allowed, if he had been told everything in private and then took it out to the public, he would not be amongst us anymore.
Okay.
So this was a controlled leak, for example. What we've been doing is we've been taking information we found in the public realm and basically put the dots together. And I think that's important to that differentiation is important.
That's actually a very vital piece, and I like to underline what you speak to, is that when we look into what we could call the cabal or the elite or whatever terms people have used to describe this group, they share private knowledge, secrets, manipulation, control mechanisms, whatever it is that they're sharing, rituals, all of that. And they're sworn to privacy, right? They're sworn to secrecy. And so when we see somebody being taken out, they've broken that. They made an allegiance at somewhere along the line. And because they were given certain keys, certain pieces of knowledge, they will be taken out. And I just would say, yes, you and I and many, many thousands and thousands of others now are going back through the documentations and trying to put the pieces back together. So we were never told anything in secret. We're not whistleblowers. Okay, so let's throw up the PowerPoint. And even the reason we bring up Germany and the reason we bring up the aspects of it is because there's also a deep esoteric story behind it. So the first thing you're going to see is a very vital piece of information. And I just wanted to give the introduction to why we're talking about the Third Reich. Okay, Claudia, I think we've got it up. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so the subject, of our presentation today is the Crown and the German Reich, a war that never ended. And this is a really vital piece of understanding from what I see is that via the legal system, this war did never end. And it leads to so many other dots when you start to understand that. I don't know what you would like to say about that.
Well, yeah, you said it. We are to this day in a world war. that started in 1914. I'll get into it with a different slides.
Okay, so it's a warping. Okay, I mean that's very much true. It's like reality's been warped, right? It's been manipulated, and this is what we just want to present is some say stepping stones or dots along the way, trying to find the line that is the truth. So we're going to start right here. And I know you started getting into this. Another thing that Claudia does is that because she's German, she has access to a lot of German documentation books and literature that those of us that don't have that language, that are books that haven't been translated. But start telling the history line here, Claudia.
The New World Order started in earnest in 1302 with the Papal Bull Unam Sanctam. We went into that particular one in more detail in our previous legal system conversation. We can put a link down in the description. And basically, the Pope declared that all people are the property of the Pope. The Pope being the representative of God on earth, because the earth belongs to God, and the Pope thought he was kind of God's dealer. So he made all people the property of himself. So we are owned by the Pope to this day.
What force does a papal bull actually have? What enforces it?
The Pope is really the leader of the earth. At least that's how the Vatican sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, to my mind, the Pope has no more right to declare anyone his property than I have the right to declare anyone my property.
Mm-hmm.
But the world seems to agree that the Pope has it all.
Mm-hmm. But really behind that is wars and conquest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anybody can say anything, but what enforces it? Well, the conquest of a people, the docile, turning people into something other than their own divine right. And so it didn't just come with his word, it came through various means of enforcing it, indoctrination, sublimation of indigenous cultures, things of that sort. So we just, and the believers, all the believers in the Pope, in the Vatican, in the Catholicism, are feeding that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So after he declared people are the property of the Pope, what was next?
After that, another Pope came along in 1455, and he declared then that all land is crown land, which means all property is owned by the Pope. These papal bulls are also called crowns. So now we know where the name Crown Corporation comes from.
Exactly. So what we're looking at is actually the shield of Romanus Pontifex, and if you can look at it, you see that the crown sits on the top. And so basically, the Pope could claim dominion, ownership over the whole earth.
Yep.
And all her abundance, and all her rights, and all her minerals, and all her waters, and all her people.
Absolutely everything.
Absolutely everything. And when a papal bull comes out, are there like cardinals and other functionaries within the church that sign on to this, or do they just bow down in obedience?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, it'd be a good thing to look at, but irregardless, the Pope is seen as the representation of this God. This God. Okay.
Yeah.
This God on earth.
Okay, I have trouble reading this now.
Okay. Well, I'll put on my glasses if you want me to read it out loud. Sometimes.
Okay, yes, please.
Okay. 1481. Bull, and I'm very bad at pronunciation. Attorney Regis. Creation of the crown. I'm going to move our little thingy here. Oh my God. Of Aragon, which was the crown of Spain, the highest steward of all Roman slaves, subject to the rule of the Pope. So right here we come in, okay? I mean, the slavery issue comes in. In 1604, Pope Paul V took the crown from Spain and granted it to King James I of England, following the passage of the Commonwealth. It was returned to Spain in 1975. This bull condemned humanity to perpetual servitude through the birth certificate as a bond sold to the central bank, effectively turning us all into Roman slaves. I'm just sitting here with it for a second.
I think this is also the law that states that separates the newborn from any property rights.
Mm-hmm. But this is a really, we've touched on this. Other people are doing great presentations on it. The underlying thing here is through the birth certificate and being sold.
Absolutely.
So because we were property, declared property of the Church of the Pope, we were bought and sold and trade, and we are still being bought and sold and trade the minute we're born via the vehicle of the birth certificate. We're given a fictitious name, and when we enter into that, we are no longer viewed as in ourselves, our own divine sovereign self. And so the minute a child is born, certified through this system, that child's future resources, whatever it produces in this life, it's going to have, is bought and bartered and sold. Is that correct?
Yes. The birth certificate is nothing other than a receipt. So the unsuspecting parent, goes to wherever they have to register the child,
Mm-hmm.
and they receive a receipt for basically handing the child over to the state.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to what I said early on with regard to perspective, if you look at it from their perspective, the parent agreed to give the child to the state. So the state now has the
Title.
And therefore, if the state doesn't like what the parent as the trustee does to the child, then the state will simply come and take the child from the parent, because the parent doesn't own the child anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No crime committed.
Right. So this is so vital, and it's just occurring to me right now as I'm listening to you that we're not just dealing with random acts of ownership or dominion or slavery.
No, nothing is random.
It's all worked into the system. So they have within them their own code or whatever. They have installed these statues, these papal bulls, these mechanisms, because they're mechanisms, because it is a system, to give them the right to do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's vital for us as human beings to jump deeper into this, because it's only by knowledge will we be able to extract ourselves by our own inherited right from this system.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a law always that supersedes their system, and we'll get into that too. So you will start. What's beautiful about this, Claudia, is just looking at the progression.
Yeah.
Right? You can start to see how well thought out this was.
Oh, it's genius, absolutely genius.
Yeah.
You know, it's evil, no doubt about that, but it's genius.
Okay. So, so they have statutes and laws and all these things that they can stand on when they want to come for your property, your child, your mineral rights, your water rights, your air rights, all of that. So here we go. Okay, glasses back on. 1537, bull convocation. And this you're going to need to explain. The Pope claims all souls lost to the sea. And it's SEE. So can you get into that a little deeper?
Okay, my understanding is still a little bit murky here, but I'll try my best. With a birth certificate, the human is lost at sea, and this is where admiral law comes in. It has to be lost at sea because if it's lost for 7 years, unless it comes back within those 7 years, then it can be declared dead. This is admiralty law. And whether you spell it SEE or SEA doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, it's a very...
that's all done deliberately.
Okay. But there's a double meaning here, because C pronounced C is the same word.
C.
But C, actually, when we get it, if you just look at the Illuminati pyramid, the structure that they built, you have the all-seeing eye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they do play with words and they do play with meanings.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm still having a hard time hearing you. Basically, what you said was that after 7 years, explain that part again.
After 7 years, the being lost at sea can be declared dead.
Ah, okay.
That's why you would have tremendous trouble finding insurance for the child under the age of 7.
Right. But they retrofitted that law, because in many nations on the planet, they did not, even though there was a birth certificate, they did not use the all capital letters, mm-hmm. which is written into that also. So you still had that aspect of a given name, but not ownership. In the time I was living in Ecuador, certainly now in Mexico and all over, they've installed the all caps, mm-hmm. and they retro the birth certificates. You can't get your original birth certificate in many of these countries. They will issue you a new one.
Yes,
that fits into that. So it's deep. And well, let's move to the next one and see what's. Oops. Why don't we want to move? Oh my gosh. Okay, fine. Be that way. You were working fine. Now you're not. I'm not surprised. Okay. Bingo. Okay.
Yep. So Leo I think it was the 13th, one of the popes anyway, in 1870 something, had a coin issued that was inscripted in Latin with the sentence that is in English above here. The nation and kingdom that will not serve me will perish.
Okay.
I'll take that in for a moment.
Well, that goes back to the question I originally asked you. What was the enforcement?
Yeah.
Right? And so here we come. Oh my gosh. I love it when things go blinkers. I mean, I think it's so funny. So basically, stamped in a gold coin we have this inscription basically sent out as a warning.
Yes, and I think it was a very clear warning to the German Empire.
Right. Well, what we can fast forward in history now too, and we can go, wait a minute, what happened to Libya? What happened to Iran? What's happening in Syria right now? What happens to any sovereign nation that chooses to step out of this monetary slash religious slash legal system? That declaration actually stands for all. But it was used, you said, and we'll get to that right now, specifically in regard to what was happening in Germany. And this is the key point that comes up here. I don't know why there's nothing on that slide.
Yeah, I'm sure there was something in there.
I'm sure there was too. Oh my God. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the German Constitution is a key element in unwinding or unraveling the story. So just tell us, Claudia, what is it that makes the German Constitution? And we're not talking about the Federal Republic, right?
No, we don't talk about the Federal Republic. I mean, the Federal Republic of Germany is a corporation.
Okay. So we're talking.
It's a corporation that was forced upon the German people in 1945.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, right.
Okay. Right. Okay. So let's just go from here. The German Reich, which, by the way, means realm. Okay. Reich is a realm, and a realm has a whole esoteric significance behind it. So let's just do a little translation here. So the German realm, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you can go from there.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it? I can read it. The German Reich, the only true sovereign state on earth that differentiates between a person, which is the legal fiction by a birth certificate, and a human being. You have to say it in Spanish. I mean, in German.
Natürliche Person.
Okay.
Which means natural person as opposed to juristic.
Is written into its constitution. And that was designed by Otto von Bismarck, who was then Chancellor of the Reich and the Minister President of Prussia.
Yes.
It bears a moment just to review before we move on to the next phrase. What that is.
A second. I want to say that here that a state has to have territory. So does a kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
A nation does not have to have territory.
Beautiful. I never heard.
And that's why the United Nations, which originated in the League of Nations, uses the word nation.
It's beautiful. And I've gone from nation to native to nativity, right? And so this I'll just tie real quick back into what's happening with the First Nations people right now that are rising up and claiming back their sovereignty, and so you're right. They don't set out boundaries and fences and marks and posts, and they don't make agreements along those lines.
Exactly.
And it's just so beautiful what's happening in that area right now. And also establish right to property, inalienable rights from birth. See, this is the inheritance, okay? We inherit these rights when we come into the earth. We are the natives of this earth when we come in, so we are, and we've forgotten, this is part of what we're remembering right now, that we are root races, First Nations. And so part of this is to unravel this that they put. And the liberation of the church, fight for fief.
Fief.
Are part of the constitution of the German Reich. So basically, we're looking at an establishment of the right of a human being to be free from the church. You can see from the coin to this point why this became the enemy of the crown. I'll read it out loud, Claudia.
Okay.
Sovereign state is in international law a non-physical judicial entity that is represented by one centralized government that has sovereignty over a geographic area. International law defines sovereign states as having a permanent population, defined territory, one government, and the capacity to enter into relationships with other sovereign states. It is also normally understood that a sovereign state is neither dependent on nor subjected to any other power of state. And that's just straight out of Wikipedia.
They are good for something occasionally.
I know, if you can weed through whatever, you can, it's fine. It's useful if you know how to use it. So what does this actually say, Claudia?
Well, it says that there are 3 conditions in order for a sovereign state to come into existence. Firstly, it has to have a geographic area. Basically, it has to have a territory for it to be a state, a sovereign state, which, by the way, the Federal Republic of Germany does not have, because the German Reich has never been dissolved. It has to have a people, permanent population, and it has to have one government.
Mm-hmm. And this international law, this is established via the treaties, via the United Nations, or is this just all written into the statutes? And
Yes.
agree. And so I would assume that any supposedly sovereign state would have to sign into that and agree to that law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at it from the point of view of exercising this law, but as we know, within the system, they can write whatever laws they want to write for whatever moment they want to exercise their power. And so
Yes.
basically, even just with that alone, right, within the international community, there's an agreement. I don't know who and what nations have, people we have to look at.
Except that international law does not apply to persons.
It doesn't apply to persons. No, it's not. Yes, this is how they.
That's the difference. And
Right.
again, it comes to perspective. If you are behaving like a person, then this doesn't apply to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but this is how they structure this. But they're still calling them sovereign states. In other words, a country, as we commonly call it, right, has its own people, establishes its own government, and establishes rights to rule its own people and its own territory and by its own government. Well,
To the best of my knowledge, there are only 4 sovereign states left on Earth.
okay.
Okay, those being Iran, Syria, North Korea, and Cuba.
And what else?
Cuba.
Cuba. Okay. So in the encroachment, let's just call it, okay, over the rights of we the people, there are a few holdout sovereign states that are not subject to this statute or this law. They maintain their sovereignty. And all we have to do is stop and think for a moment, what are the most attacked nations? Right? And who's taking over who? Right? And what is any warlike country, specifically the United States with the Allies, what are they really taking? They're declaring their sovereign right through the Crown Corporation, Okay, they're not their sovereign right. They're declaring their illegally gained system to literally, they're using that to destroy nations and to, and if you shall not come into my rule, you will perish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of blatant. And so they establish the system so that they can stand on it, all the while pulling the wool and the hood over we the people's eyes. So so what do we I mean, look, I mean, I can't give an analysis from me right now, but I can certainly look into what you just presented. Four sovereign states left. What happened to the rest of them? I mean, it's a real easy answer. War. You either comply,
Yep.
you want to go into the system, or if you don't, bye-bye. So this is, actually when I helped put this together, this goes deeper than I even realized when I was doing it. So, all right. Okay, so sovereign by law. I have to move our little camera thingy. I think I'll just diminish it. Okay. Only people can form states. Okay, so here we go. This is again sovereign by law. Therefore, the republic is not a state because it only recognizes citizens and not people. So let me work this through my own thought process.
Replace people with human beings, or men and women, and citizens with persons.
Okay, so basically, because there are no sovereign states, there's only 4 sovereign states left. All the other nations have given over within the system, and they now recognize their former people as citizens, right? So while there's established within the international law the right to sovereign state, it's actually been forcibly removed. And so when we go back into the next paragraph here, the German Reich, and I like to say realm, has been, since 1871, a sovereign state. The Reich had been devoid of people since 1918 because a member of the emperor's government announced he had abdicated, which he most likely did not, as he continued to sign every letter with Emperor Rex. Okay, so what happened here in this, if he didn't really abdicate, what happened there?
He fled into exile.
Okay.
Why would he have done that if he had abdicated?
There you go. Okay. That just clarifies it. Okay. And we won't talk about exile today, but that's a very interesting aspect of all of this too. So they basically subdued him, threatened him, whatever they had to do by his family, or who knows what they threatened with, and so he fled into exile. I mean, people don't go into exile unless their life's at risk. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So basically, what I would extract from this is that the German Reich still exists.
It does, yes.
Okay.
It was even confirmed by a German court.
Okay.
It is not, it cannot act, but it exists.
Okay. Thank you.
And the reason it cannot act is because it does not have people.
Because it doesn't have what?
People.
People, right, okay. I got it. Well, that's beautiful. Okay. So if people come back into their own sovereignty, and then...
Yes, then they can reactivate the German realm.
Right, okay. So this is a declaration made by Pope Pius in 1874. And I'll read it out loud. Bismarck, and we're talking about Otto Bismarck, who wrote the German Constitution. Bismarck is the snake in the paradise of mankind. Through the serpent, the German people are seduced to want to be more than God himself. And this self-influx will be followed by a humiliation as no nation has yet had to taste. It is not we, but the Eternal One, who knows whether the grain of sand has not yet dissolved in the mountains of eternal retribution, which growing in decline will in a few years break against the clay feet of this kingdom and turn it into ruins. This empire, erected like the Tower of Babel in defiance of God, and fall apart for the glorification of God. Pope Pius on the 3rd anniversary of the founding of the German Reich. Pause.
I mean, the reason why this is so incredibly significant is because that Pope in 1874, so what, 30, 40 years before the First World War started, actually told the world the Vatican's plans with Germany, because this is exactly what happened.
So let's just pull this apart a little bit, okay? Because most people think the war started up for political reasons. Most people think it was a battle between the Allies and Germany and Poland and Russia, and all of that got involved in it. But what we see issuing a decree is actually coming from the Vatican or the Crown, right? So those that are obeying this are under that crown. And so when this decree went out, take it apart a little bit more. What is this God, okay, that the Pope is speaking about? Okay? Is he speaking about what we know as creator? Or is he speaking about an installed God?
Exactly.
Right? So God is a word that one must unwrap for themselves. Because as in the previous, videos and other studies, we've talked about that, the God matrix, the God system, the absorption of sovereign human beings that feeds on them, that owns them, that can do whatever it feels, that it establishes as these laws so that it has something to stand on, so that it can come after all the resources of Mother Earth herself. And that includes us. So, the language of it for somebody that hasn't looked on the flip side may sound very potent and powerful, the black snake. I mean, what an inversion of that word right now, right? And they do this in their language. They show what they are, and they project it onto that which they wish to destroy.
Yep.
Right? And so this is a deeply embedded, it's more than just words from 1874. This is deeply embedded in our reality. And for anybody listening to this, it is worth not believing or taking or following what Claudia and I are presenting here, but to start to do your own work and finding out for yourself, because nothing becomes living again until it knows the truth and it declares itself a living being. So it's just, we'll put this up, and if anybody wants to, download it and have it and ponder it and do their own investigation, they're very welcome to it. Okay, so now we're going to move into World War I. Began in 1914, and a truce was established in 1918, which is the same date when supposedly the emperor, or what was his name? He supposedly abdicated.
Emperor Wilhelm II.
Yeah, so same date, right? 1918?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. The emperor is said to have abdicated. Oh, it's right there. But he fled, and his abdication was merely announced by a minister. Okay, so there you clarify that right there. All right? So he went into exile. right? So we don't really have his word. We don't have his speaking that he actually abdicated. Then from 1919, the name of an individual became the property of the Weimar Republic, the illegally installed state. Can you tell a little bit about the history of that? Who was this person?
I can't at the moment,
Okay.
because I only very briefly touched on it in the research I did recently.
Okay. Well, we can leave those questions to be answered, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's not a problem. It just is giving the bullet points of this right now. What followed was the illegal establishment of the Weimar Republic, together with its also illegal constitution, because the 1911 version of the 1871 Constitution could never be revoked, resulting in the world's largest inflation thanks to the conditions imposed by the victors of the war. And this is what we go back to is the Versailles Treaty.
Yes.
Right? And the Versailles Treaty basically literally gutted Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it took away all their rights to even exist. They were now, were declared to be in debt to the crown, basically. So no trade, so just investigate it, friends. I mean, we have it up on some other videos too. Okay, so this is where we get into the war that never ended, right? So when a war ends, the warring parties sign a peace accord or a peace treaty or an agreement that the war has ended. And that's when we know, as of whatever, the people can figure out that we're no longer at war. So in 1933, the Third Reich was established with no basis in law because the three conditions necessary to form a sovereign state, permanent population, defined territory, one government, were not met, as large parts of German territory had been given away without German consent to other countries. Okay, this leads us into the continuation of this war, what we call World War II. Right? There was actually, the initial movements were to reclaim pieces of Germany that had been given away. From 1933 onward, many statutes were imposed by Adolf Hitler's government. Now, I don't know what those statutes are. I don't know if you can illuminate that.
Just a little bit. Corporate tax law, or what is called corporate tax law, income tax, and similar were actually installed by Hitler's government, and they are valid to this day.
Okay, so because of the hearing you, so these statutes did what? I mean, I heard it, that income tax, corporations, what were the statutes about?
Well, that an individual has to pay income tax, and the company has to pay corporation tax.
Okay.
And
So
those statutes continue to this day. The German so-called law included them without even changing the words.
Okay, so I would have to start looking at that a little bit myself to understand the deeper issues. But was Hitler at that moment reclaiming, or was he? What was the axe for? What were the steps?
I have not figured out why he did that, but I have a suspicion that he knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, see, the thing is, the first thing that was absolutely forbidden in 1945 in the making of the Federal Republic was to take any statutes that the Third Reich had imposed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the various law texts in German, and it blatantly refers to statutes created in 1933, 1934, and 1936. It actually refers to them, and these are valid statutes today.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we have? Are we forbidden to use Hitler's laws, or are we not forbidden?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It sounds to me, okay, just knowing other pieces of the puzzle, that he was establishing his right of the Third Reich to rule his realm. And it seems to me almost as if within that 1933 timeframe, that knowing how the law system had been written to subdue and to enslave the people of Germany, he was using that for the establishment of the German Reich. I don't know that. I really don't know that. It's just that a lot of times we'll say when people are looking through this material, you can't see it from the perspective of now consciousness back in time. You have to actually take yourself back in that time frame and view it from what was going on there, right? Because during all this time, we've been re-educated, reprogrammed, okay, to see something different.
Oh, yeah.
So what happened then isn't happening now, or it's happening now in a different octave. You know, so it's just important to use, and I know, you know, both you and I often have to, you know, go from the intuitive into the critical mind and the questioning mind. You know, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm sure there's still things that are obscured here. So in 1939, the war flared up again until in 1945, the German army capitulated. Hitler.
I've always wondered, why was it only the German army that capitulated?
Well, I mean,
well, the Third Reich had no people.
Right.
So
well,
nobody could capitulate the German Reich.
Right. So the army gave itself up. Okay. They had lost dearly. And I don't mean lost like just the war. They lost dearly. They lost as many lives, if not more, right, than what we could call the other aspects of the Allied forces and things. And they were brutally treated, you know. So one brutality doesn't right another brutality. It just doesn't. And then we have the great mystery of that, you know, Hitler allegedly committing suicide, and the Allies occupied all of Germany. So, you know, I don't think we'll go into that today, but it does lead, because when we start to look at what really happened with Adolf Hitler, we would move into the esoteric realm behind the story, right? So, well, we'll do that another time, because we don't want to make this too long today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, agreements for peace, right? The end of a war is agreement for peace. So, in 1947, a peace treaty was signed between Italy and the victorious Allies, which we would say were the United States of America, UK,
and
France, okay? The Allied forces.
And obviously the Soviet Union.
And the Soviets, okay. In 1951, the Treaty of San Francisco established peace between Japan and the Allied forces, excluding the then Soviet Union, with whom only an agreement that war had been ended was signed in 1956. Okay, so these are just points in the system to be looking at, okay? So we don't have the Third Reich, okay? We don't have that signing any treaty of peace, no agreement of peace, all right? They were excluded from it, and established was the Federal Republic of Germany, again, illegally, again, without any peace treaty. So basically what you're pointing out here is that even the Republic of Germany has actually never entered into a peace treaty with the Allied forces, or the victors.
They can't.
Okay. Okay, there you go. They can't, and it's very
They
interesting.
cannot because they are not a state.
Mm-hmm. And so when we look at this, we say also that the Soviet Union, and this comes into our present situation, friends. This is why this is very important to get the continuum here, is that the Soviet Union only made an agreement. Okay? And I don't know what that agreement states. I don't know what the agreement was. But it doesn't specifically establish, from what we have here, that it went into a peace treaty or an accord. Okay, an accord. This is where chord, okay, when these nations chord together and become a one person, and this is the one world order, which you brought up originally. So, Article 73 of the UN chapter. Members of the United Nations which have or assume responsibilities for the administration of territories whose peoples have not yet attained a full measure of self-government recognize the principle that the interest of the inhabitants of these territories are paramount and accept as a sacred trust the obligation to promote to the utmost within the system of international peace and security established by the present chapter, the well-being of the inhabitants of these territories. And to this end, to ensure, with due respect for the culture of the peoples concerned, their political, economic, social, and educational advancement, their just treatment, and their protection against abuses.
Yep, there you have it. Now we know why there is such an incredible influx of migrants into Germany who come from a completely different cultural background.
Explain that a little further.
This charter basically states that anyone who's not a sovereign nation, if there is a shift in its inhabitants, and these inhabitants become the majority, then basically the native inhabitants have no longer any rights that are specific to their own culture.
Okay, so yeah, this needs to be torn apart because, when you read it on the surface, it sounds like it's there to protect the people.
No, it isn't.
Okay, I mean, really, that's what it looks like on the surface. But then when you go political, economic, social, and educational advancement. Okay, so it's trying to incorporate natives, indigenous, those who do not have a state into the system.
Yeah.
Right? So always, it's just so valuable to read the intent behind these written laws. And we can also just fast forward right now, okay, to where we are today with the rise of the indigenous native all across our planet right now. Where's the UN? They haven't done one thing to protect these people.
But they are not there to protect people.
Well, right, but according to their own words, their protection against abuses. And yet you can see the hypocrisy within that by their lack of action. They send in UN observers to war-torn places like Palestine, Syria. They sent them to Standing Rock, all right? But their intent behind their law is not to protect these people and their own native rights to their own sovereignty. It's to incorporate them into the system.
And, with regard to Standing Rock, if, again, you switch perceptive from our own perceptive to the corporation's perceptive, what they are doing is perfectly legit because they are in the majority and therefore their interests go before the native people. So if the majority of people is happy to install that pipeline, then that's what they will be doing. That is their way of thinking, because they only think in persons and not in terms of lives. Persons are dead.
No, well, we're seen as a resource for them to use and do and bid at their own will, right? And since they have the greater mass of will, or which is changing right now, they are able to enforce this. When the will of the people changes, they won't be able to enforce it any longer. When our will becomes, and our conviction becomes stronger. And I see that happening all over the place.
It's also very important that we all need to stand up and declare ourselves as life beings.
Yeah. Yes.
Because we are not the person. We
Yes.
have a person. And that's a huge difference, which so many people don't get.
This was so clearly demonstrated to me when I was at Standing Rock, Claudia. Okay. It was so clearly demonstrated in, the time that I did get down to the front line. And the most important thing, okay, I mean, there was the deep prayer in the ceremony and the deep deepening into the world of spirit, which is the Mother Earth spirit, and the all abundant field that she has always been there for us. But it was also no fear. Okay. A sovereign can't be a sovereign and be in fear. Right.
No.
And so the literal force field that was created by the prayer, the ceremony, the fires, and the people standing there with no fear and only holding peace and the truth of their own divinity, really. And I'm not talking about the divinity that comes up into an egoic pattern. I'm talking about their true reverence for the divinity of life. And literally, that established what happened there, all right? What happened was the world started to see the defining marking line between what has been incorporated through this system and into all systems. And I'm just, but see, I like to speak this for anybody listening, because this is the key. Your sovereignty. Your inalienable rights as a sovereign being to do no harm and live here on this planet. And so, we can see back in time now. We'll go back in time and see what was at that time, given what was the consciousness of the planet at that time, what was trying to be, where the battle lines were, let's say. They're much more obscure than they are today because they're revealing. All sovereign nations and people are the enemy of the Crown Corporation. So let's flip it, okay? The real black snake is the Crown acting as a corporate entity. How much more clear can it be?
Exactly.
A corporate entity, it's a lifeless structure. Okay, it's lifeless. A corporate entity has no life. It is only bound by rules and regulations and agreements. Mm-hmm. And the absorption with the Crown Corporation behind it, its divine right to take whatever it wants. And anything that gets in its way, it has declared it will destroy. It's that simple. I'm going to read this because it is a continued subversion and version of the truth that once seen will reveal the lie. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not as a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. The traitor is the plague. This is how this got installed. And you can substitute any entity that you want for the word the traitor. Because what is a traitor? That betrays life. That betrays or is a traitor to the divinely inherited rights of our sovereignty. We are the native, indigenous of this earth, human beings. And we come in colors and sizes and package. And we do have a right to be a fool. We have a right to be ambitious. We have a right to be all these things, as long as we do no harm. Claudia?
Yes, the only law that applies to the human being living on this earth is do no harm.
Right. And all behind that trails leave the planet a better place than you came to it for your children. You know, when you say do no harm, one inside themselves has to understand deeply what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to, because that's the clearing of our own inner field. And it comes with gnosis and knowledge and wisdom. It doesn't just, you know, it's not just a word that we throw out there and say, oh, okay. No, it's something that one has to work within themselves to completely understand, because along the whole system, and we're only going back these several hundreds of years, is something much deeper. And I'm sure we'll get into that at another point. Well, we will get into the more esoteric nature of this. I put this here, okay, for consideration. The white tribes of the Nordic root race, the right to the sovereign rule of a nation and her people. And you will see here things that might make you cringe. And I just put it forward, and as we started out this talk, Claudia, because in our research, and we research on many, many different levels, we also do a deep, deep excavation, okay, of ourselves and our relationship to this earth and our relationship to the cosmos. And it came to me so strong, Claudia, when we were starting to work on this, you know, and it's a very vital piece also for the other root races to reintegrate within the field, is the white tribes. And I have so many memories that surface that of what was done to the Celts, what was done to the Nordic people, the Norse, what was done to the white tribes. And they also suffered genocide. Mm-hmm. Vicious, brutal genocide. Yeah. You know, so we are all one people, we are all one nation. And this is our time, friends. And I look at this image and I see the pillar, the staff, all right, and the two wings. This is where we start imploding duality within ourselves. When we start refining the field of our own being to stand up tall, to stand up straight, because we have known the dark and the light, all right? And within that field, there's a generated force field. And one can call it vril, one can call it plasma, one can call it the ethers, one can call it organ, prana, whatever name throughout time, is that when we conquer ourselves, all right, then we enter into a whole other reality. And it's a golden one, and it bears seeds and it bears fruits.
Beautiful.
And so we all have a part to play. And this is the beauty, again, of Standing Rock. And when I look at the emblem with the four fists, the black, the red, the white, and the yellow. When they all come together as one, when all of these manipulated wars between us, okay, are done. When this war finally ends, because the war has not ended, and behind that is the conquest of Syria, Palestine, Iran, Iraq, Libya, okay? Wherever the victors walk, they create destruction. That's all anybody really has to see.
All we need to do is open our eyes and start to see, to really see. And everyone will get it eventually, what's going on, and withdraw from it.
So it all comes down to choice.
Yeah.
Once you see, yes, it's just a simple choice, okay? You don't have to do all the investigation we did. You don't have to do any of the digging. You don't have to do any of that unless it calls you to do it. We all have a call. We all have a spirit. We all have a call to express ourselves in unique, diverse ways. But once you see, then you have a choice. And only with that choice comes free will. Because if you don't see the choices, you're actually not even exercising free will. And that's what they do not want you to exercise. So it's one step. It's one choice. War or peace. Love or fear. You know, and it all starts right there. It's like this little tiny seed that you yourself are responsible to water and grow it. And within saying that, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It's just like the seed of you and your full potential is always there. Will you water it? Will you bring it into life? Will you flower into the divineness of your own being? Or not? It's just one step. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
I do thank Claudia for going into this material and bringing it up. And as always, Claudia, we never know until we get there what's going to come out. You know, so we're not operating from a preset of judgments or agendas here. It's not about that. It's just about presenting what we have found. Yours to choose or not, you know? Or if you don't see it the way it is, do your own investigation. Start tracking these things. You know, we have no argument with anyone. I love you.
I love you.
Okay, darling. See you soon.